As we all know, the Mario Kart series is one of Nintendo's most important franchises, releasing on almost every system and creating a new genre that other popular mascots would take advantage of. But how did it all begin? By the early 90s, racing was expanding onto home consoles, new subgenres were being explored, and the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 graphics allowed for full rotation. One of the best examples was F-Zero, a fast, smooth, and challenging racer set in the future with jumps, obstacles, and a catchy soundtrack. After becoming a successful launch title, Shigeru Miyamoto pitched the idea for a sequel with split-screen multiplayer. But after concluding that a high-speed racer on two different Mode 7 screens was technically impossible, the next plan was to make a new IP. Directors Hideki Kono and Tadashi Sugiyama understood the potential of racing games and Nintendo's image combined. They found that the only way to make a Mode 7 racer on two screens was to shrink the field of the gameplay area into a square, and the only believable vehicle that was tailored for such a small area was a go-kart. They also didn't want the dangerous thrills of an F1 or F-Zero game, but a more relaxed presentation, like going to an amusement park. After all, multiplayer was a priority, and if you're not having fun with family or friends playing this game, what's the point? The characters were originally generic in overalls with nothing to distinguish, apart from their outfit colours. This was too boring, so the development team experimented with established characters, and they found that Mario and Co were the easiest to recognise while in the middle of a race. The rest, they say, is history. Super Mario Kart was released for the Super Nintendo in Japan on August 1992, September in North America, and the rest of the world by January 1993. Because I didn't grow up with the Super Nintendo, I always thought for a long time that Mario Kart 64 was the first in the series. I mean, how could there be an optimal kart racer on a 16-bit console? Yeah, to say I was living under a rock is an understatement. But thanks to the Super Nintendo Mini, it's time for me to make up for lost time. Super Mario Kart, along with F-Zero and Pilot Wings, defined Mode 7 graphics during the Super Nintendo's early life cycle. Along with the DSP chip to allow smoother rotation, it's set on a square as opposed to F-Zero, which was a huge line. And like I said at the beginning, it's set up like this so split-screen multiplayer was possible. Although the lack of elevation makes it very easy to hit into a barrier, being set in a closed area means that most tracks have pixels and sprites set to designated locations. Okay, F-Zero was technically like that as well, but it felt like you were driving into the distance, which kinda makes sense. F-Zero vehicles can reach speeds up to 500 kilometers. In a game like Super Mario Kart, a small square allows the designers to do more without compromising the power of the Super Nintendo. And that's why the presentation stands out even to this day. It looks and feels old school, not outdated, and instead of racing on regular go-kart tracks, the locations are based on levels and worlds from Super Mario World, including Donut Plains, Choco Island, Ghost Houses, and Bowser's Castle, with a couple of exceptions including standard tarmac circuits and the beautiful Rainbow Road. While F-Zero was all about the challenge, Super Mario Kart chills out. Less danger, while still providing the option to be as challenging. Actually, I think that's bogus. I mean look, these characters are driving around lava and in space. It's no less dangerous than F-Zero when you think about it, and it's not like your competitiveness will decline either. Scattered on the track are coins and item boxes. Coins are used to increase speed, with 10 being the optimal amount. Anything more than that is just insurance, because getting hit by a power-up or falling off the track costs coins, and having zero causes you to slide out even from the nudge of an opponent, so collect as many as you can. Honestly, I had to look it up because it's hard to notice the coins making a difference, especially because this game uses a rubber banding system, which I'll get to. And coins would return in Super Circuit, but not again for another 10 years. Because being knocked around is routine during races, you can fight back with the item boxes, sometimes all over the track or on a designated area. And no, not a single blue shell to worry about. Like the tracks, the power-ups are also based on the Super Mario series. You have a selection of 8 drivers who are synonymous with the Mario Bros. Franchise, and most would return in subsequent titles or even appear in every single one. After the decision was made to use Super Mario characters, choosing which ones to use specifically didn't take long, with the Koopa Troopa being the only last minute addition. It's not like the Goomba could use a steering wheel, and Wario made his debut after the release of Super Mario Kart. Sticking with the subject of item boxes, the opponent drivers have their own unique power-up they use infinitely while they're behind you, and they also have their own unique attributes, meaning that whoever you select affects the way the car handles. The development team went to a go-kart track to research the controls of the vehicles, the frequency of running into other opponent drivers, the track design, and the way karts slide. It was never going to be perfect, since the Super Nintendo controller utilizes a D-pad, but it's quite authentic for a 16-bit racer. Cornering too much causes it to slide, and the surface you drive on makes a difference. For example, snow is slipperier than the tarmac. This is when the trigger buttons come into play. An experienced player would consistently drift into the sunset, whereas I find myself using the brakes or sliding out. But after racing on a few tracks without tight corners on a higher engine cup, I eventually understood, and after a bit of practice, I figured out the correct technique. That's when Super Mario Kart has you hooked. Easy to get into, but hard to master. According to Miyamoto, he told the development team to only focus on single-player gameplay, so that when it came time for 2 players, it was automatically just as fun, if not better. Now you know how in typical split-screen multiplayer games, the screen is smaller and the graphics are downgraded just so that it can run more than one screen at a reasonable frame rate. Well, in Super Mario Kart, regardless of 1 or 2 players, your view only takes up half the screen, which means if you choose multiplayer, your perception doesn't change, and nor does the game have to compromise. When playing single player, the bottom of the screen is a map of the track and the driver dots, basically a huge version of this. And whenever an opponent is about to attack, it switches to a rear view so you have a chance to prepare and avoid. Things to do vary on the number of players. On single player there's Mario Grand Prix, a selection of 4 race tournaments with different tracks, and time trial. I think we all know what that is. But if you select multiplayer, you can also race or battle each other one-on-one, like a demolition derby with weapons. This means you can throw rankings out the window, because the goal is to knock all the balloons off the other player's cart, using the power-ups. It was originally an open area, but the developers thought it would be too nauseating for the player. Literally. So the obstacles and barriers were added, making it easier to hit yourself with green shells. Super Mario Kart is taken to another level on multiplayer, because it increases excitement and you have more gameplay options. The 50cc cups are obviously going to be easy even when playing it for the first time, but to unlock the special cup, you need to complete all 3 of these ones in the 100cc class. There's a cup on the left indicating your progress. There's no story mode and Mario GP is the closest you'll get to it, as the main goal is to win all the cups in every class. The bigger the class, the faster the karts, the higher the difficulty. That was very hard to say. Unlike F-Zero, you have a point tally system where the higher you place in a race, the more points you get, and the most points in a series wins the cup. However, you can't advance to the next race if you place lower than a points finish, 4th. Okay, it's probably a nitpick. I get that you need to consistently do well, it's not a very big game, and with Mario Kart 64, the number of circuits in a cup is 4, so to win it, you can't skip a race. But what if I'm trying to win 150cc for example? Taking it seriously, I've just won the first 4 races. With 1 left, looking at the point tally, it's impossible to lose the cup. Why do I need to finish in the top 4? I'm just saying that the point system is pointless, no pun intended. And good luck winning, because the opponent drivers are like flies that don't go away. I should stop mentioning rubber banding, or at least not complain about it, because every racing game I've reviewed around this period, this era, has it. but it's always been a pet peeve of mine in racing games. It imbalances the gameplay and defeats the purpose of having difficulty options. 150cc translates to impossible to gain any form of lead no matter how skilled you are. I can somewhat understand implementing it in multiplayer, so you don't anger the person next to you from smashing them, and it stops you from being lazy if you're in the lead. But unless you've played it for so long, knowing exactly which moment to slide and which shortcut to drive past, something's odd if not being in the lead is considered a strategy. Like F-Zero, the difficulty is measured by how quickly opponent drivers can overtake you if you mess up, and how long it takes to get that position back. And yet despite that, I still really like this game. The whole point of kart racing games is more than just precision driving, and the higher engine classes frustrate you enough that you want to keep racing, because I never said that it's impossible. No other racing game in 1992 had this much variety during races, and because Rainbow Road is the only track design that isn't used more than once, and, well, look at it, it's a glorious and satisfying way to finish the game. Super Mario Kart sold nearly 9 million copies, becoming the third best-selling title on the Super Nintendo. It spawned a series in which each one was a top 5 bestseller for every system it came out for, including the Switch as of this review, and it's not hard to see why. Although it's technically not the first game with go-karts as a vehicle, that honor goes to Power Drift, but the blueprint of go-karts with an array of recognizable characters to choose from with their own unique stats, on racetracks based on levels from the main series, with obstacles and power-ups. This is the first of its kind. And it's also the first Mario spin-off. First non-platformer. Okay, technically Dr. Mario is, but he didn't play as Mario. Throughout the years, Mario has ventured into golf, tennis, party challenges, and the RPG genre, and Super Mario Kart started that trend, which obviously makes it one of the greatest video game spin-offs of all time. No matter what we think of it now, it made an impact on video gaming, and I understand why people prefer this over the successors. It's more than a novelty, it's a revolution, a groundbreaking title for the Super Mario franchise.